Hey guys, Sandy here, and today I am going to be showing you how to stamp through a stencil. So I'm actually going to be making a card today, which is definitely different from me. I don't do a lot of card process videos, but I really wanted to make a card for my boss, so this is what I'm doing. Now this is actually not a stencil, it is more of a sequin guide, so you can build sequin designs, but I thought that this would be fun to stamp through. I also have the Grateful stamp, and I also have this Enchanted Rose background stamp. I have a sheet of Not Your Mama's cardstock. It is cut in half, and then I also brought in my Aqua Pigments, so let's see what I can do. Now my first attempt turned out, but didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. So I will have a second attempt here. Now I'm taking a couple of my Aqua Pigments and I am just popping them straight down onto my mixed media mat. I squirted it with a little bit of water just to soften it, and now I am making sure that I get the color throughout. I also grabbed some of the pearl just because I like that little bit of shimmer and shine. Now I decided to use my sequin placeholder stencil, and I thought that this would be the perfect stencil because there was a lot of open space. However, it did not turn out, not the way I was expecting it to. Now I'm using this beautiful floral background stamp, and I thought, you know, this would be awesome. You would be able to see the stamp through the stencil. You would have these circles. It would kind of do something pretty cool, but it does not. It does not do something pretty cool, you guys. What happens is that the stencil part is so thin that ultimately it turns into just a background stamp. Like, you don't actually see the circles. But I left this in here because I wanted you to be able to know, like, this is the kind of thing. And so that you could see my thought process and figure out what stencil might work the best for you for when you do this project. So, really disappointing. Not disappointing in the fact. And then the first time I didn't even have any none of the ink went through the stencil, you guys. None of it. And I could have edited this video like super awesomely and could have just shown you like the short and sweet process where there were no mistakes. But you know what? Sometimes we have to see the mistakes to know, like, not to spend the time to do that, right? So I didn't look for any YouTube videos or anything like that before I got this idea. It was just what I kind of thought would happen. And yeah. So if I had looked for a YouTube video, maybe I would have seen this. Maybe I wouldn't have, but I just wanted you guys to be able to see it. So I'm using the Brutus Monroe embossing ink, and I'm also using, I forget what embossing powder I was using, and it's off the screen so I can't tell you guys, so hopefully you saw it. But as you can see, the embossing powder and embossing ink has stuck through there. So I'm just using my heat tool to emboss that up. And honestly, guys, I love the way that this looks. Like, I love kind of like the liney watercolor effect, and I really like the flower on top of it. But it doesn't look like I stamped through a stencil. It just doesn't. It looks like I put down the background and then I embossed the background. And that's really not the effect I was looking for. So I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to move on and try a different way. And I'm going to try a different color too, because, you know, I couldn't go forth with the pinks and the reds anymore because I felt like I'd kind of screwed that one up, even though it's a card that I'm still going to give to my boss. Like, this card is still going to her. I think also if I would have done this card again, I probably would have embossed "There Was Always Something to Be Grateful For" on top instead of just inking it, just because I really like embossed sentiments. They make me happy. So in the future, if I do this card again, that's what I'll be doing. So I'm using a card base from one of the inspiration boxes. I couldn't tell you which one because when I get my inspiration box, I kind of tear into it and tear it apart. And all the card bases go into a little plastic bin. And normally I use those for matting photos because, as you guys know, I mostly, 99.9% of the time, scrapbook with my inspiration box. I don't really make cards out of the box. When I make cards, like when I make this one, I do it because I need a card and I just kind of grab whatever supplies I'm thinking good things about. So there it is. Now I decided, okay, that didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted, so let's try again. So I grabbed my newest stencil from Brutus Monroe, and that is the Star Lantern stencil. And I love this stencil, like just as it is, and I want to ink blend this stencil in a major way. But I thought, well, how about if I try this floral stencil? And it didn't work out the way I wanted it to either. I kept getting the floral on the stencil, but I wasn't getting it to poke through. So I try a couple different things. I try, pushing it with my hand. I try the Misty. I even grab my brayer and try to brayer it on, but nothing works. So I'm thinking, okay, this is still not the technique. I think that this is the right stencil, but it's just not the right stamp. So we ditch that idea and we move on. So I just tried to clean up the stencil just a little bit. It is stained, and that's okay. I kind of love it when my stencils get stained and a little glitter paste or glitter glaze lingers on there, because that means the stencil's been used and loved, and that kind of makes me happy. But ultimately, I'm like, we need to figure this out. So I grab a different stamp set, and this one is a really fun stamp set, and I can't remember the name, so I'm going to grab it real quick. That is not Botanical Banners. I mixed up my stamp sets. Abstract Art. It's Abstract Art. So what I decide was these little guys. I will have better control if I do it on a tiny acrylic block, and I push it through the stencil like this. And I can see that the ink is going through the stencil. Finally, I'm having success with this bad boy. So now I'm excited. I'm just going to start grabbing all the little abstract art bits and just push them through. And as you can see, I am getting ink all over my arm. That is because I had not used these stamps yet. They had just come in my most recent order. And then I was just, trying to rub that little film off of them, but there was ink on the block and, anyway, black arms. It's okay. It's all good. So I like what it's done here. It's not a full stencil through. It's kind of like a sketchy stencil through. And I really, really like the look of this. I am going to go ahead and heat set that detail ink with my heat gun. And I will, boy, I had a mess after these cards. I will clean up that little bit later. So I just toss aside the stamps. I am trying to clean off my arm just a little bit. And just one little fun fact, I have the Holiday Cookie Squeaky Clean stamp cleaner. And good to know that will pull off most of the ink off of your arms. So, sweet and awesome. So I dropped down 2 little drops of Aqua Pigments, and I just put it in this little heart dish that I keep on my desk. It is my secondary sequin dish when I'm adhering sequins. And I'm just tapping, or rather just swiping the color across the card. So now I'm going to cut down the cardstock to create the card panel for the front. Now, I purposely cut it off at the edge. I just think that looks kind of cool. I am using another blue card base. Again, this came from a Brutus Monroe inspiration box. Again, can't tell you which one because I keep them on that nice little paper holder. I went ahead and stamped out Congratulations, and that is from the Botanical banner set. I just fussy cut it out with my fingers, and I am going to use some foam squares to pop it up. And then I'm just going to layer it over top of the stenciled area of the card. So yes, these are very basic cards, but you know what? I think a lot of the times people are intimidated with paper crafting when they see these big elaborate things, and you're like, oh man, I could never do that. Yeah, I could never do that. But just to show that you can make a cute, simple card, I mean, I think it's cute. There it is, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys again real soon for another video.